Hi everyone, this is Zunker Chapter 1, Historical Developments and Some Basic Issues. And I just want to let you know that this is the first chapter, so basically it's going to do kind of a general overview so that we are all aware of what's going on in the society according to the textbook at this time period. Okay? Alright, the next one is Introduction, Overview of Course. We're going to talk a little bit about career choice. Believe it or not, we do have a decision in what kind of career we want to have. Although, obviously, as you meet more and more people, you will realize that everyone's lives are a little bit different. Connection between career and personal problems, adaptation to changes in the workplace, multiple career dilemmas, unemployment, and maintenance of a balanced lifestyle. All right, so let's start with the overview. Does not separate career and personal concerns. Instead, integrates them to evaluate better how all life roles are interrelated. So what that is saying is that basically your work life is part of also your life in general. Okay, we don't want to separate everything into completely different compartments where they never intersect and stuff because that doesn't happen. Have you ever had a really bad day at work and then bring it home to your family or your partner or something like that? If so, that means that you can see how it can be actually integrated, that one might actually affect the other. Counselors need to recognize the relationship between career issues and all other life roles and assist people to systems to discover healthier ways of living. Terminology. So career is overall defined as time extended working out of a purposeful life pattern through work undertaken by the person. Career is also defined specifically as the activities and positions involved in vocations, occupations, and jobs, as well as related activities associated with an individual's lifetime of work. Protean career is defined as something that encompasses any kind of flexible, idiosyncratic career course with peaks and valleys, left turns, moves from one line of work to another, and so forth. It is unique and like a fingerprint. So that basically means each individual person because your life career is going to be a lot different than my life career compared to another person that you might know. Career development is the total constellation of psychological, sociological, educational, physical, economic, and chance factors that combine to influence the nature and significance of work in the total lifespan of any given individual. Career counseling is all in counseling activities associated with career choice over a lifespan. So that involves talking about family, work, personal concerns, and leisure. Work maladjustment, stress reduction, mental health concerns, developmental programs that enhance work skills, interpersonal relationships, adaptability, flexibility, and self-agency. So just a couple of definitions just in case you are not familiar. When it comes to maladjustment, basically, when you go to work and you actually don't get along with the place of work. So you're not going to be able to cope, maybe adapt to the workplace for some reason or whatever. Okay. And then also interpersonal relationships are relationships between you and your coworkers and your boss, basically relationships with other people. Sometimes we do have challenges when we're not able to communicate with other people. Career guidance, all components of services and activities in educational institutions, agencies, and other organizations that offer counseling and career-related programs. Work is defined as activity that produces something of value for oneself or others. So that includes salary and unpaid work. So work means getting paid, but also, sometimes you're doing an internship and you're doing work basically. Okay. Something of value could be money. Okay. Career intervention is any activity designed to enhance a person's career development or to enable that person to make more effective career decisions. Historical development. Career counseling touches all aspects of human life. So work does get interconnected with politics, economy, education, philosophical beliefs, ideas, and also social progress and change. There are 6 stages of development from 1890, according to Pope, which is written in 2000. Stage 1 is from 1890 to 1919, growth of placement services in urban areas to meet the needs of growing industrial organizations. Stage 2 is 1920 to 1939, growth of educational guidance in elementary and secondary schools. And Stage 3 is from 1940 to 1959, significant growth of guidance needs in colleges and trainings of counselors. So as you can see just in the first 3 here, that there was a trend during this time, which is that a lot of people were moving from more farming towns to more urban areas to work in, let's say, factories and stuff like that. So because of that, there's more and more people who are centered in uh, urban areas. Okay, so that means that then we need additional supports for urban areas when people have families. So you can see in stage 2, they start to go, hey, you know what? Children don't need to, let's say, go to work. They should actually go to school and learn about stuff before they choose to do work. And then in the third one is, those people start to, let's say, grow up and then want to maybe have more advanced careers and working in factories. That means that there needs to be additional supports then in college as well. Stage 4 is 1960 to 1979. Organizational career development focus. The nature of work is seen as pervasive life role, basically meaning that pretty much everyone sees work as now part of their life and that everyone is probably going to end up working. Stage 5 is from 1980 to 1989. Transitions brought on by information technology, career counseling in private practice, and outplacement services. So during this time is when computers and stuff, technology start to kind of, bubble up. And that technology does make things or affect things when it comes to work and just living in general. And also during this time period, it was a lot of career counseling going on in private as well as public. So we're going to see professional employment specialists. Instead of just working with the government and stuff, you can actually hire someone who specifies, who basically is a specialist in this area. Stage 6 is 1990 to the present time, changing demographics, multicultural counseling, technology development, and school to work transition. So I can see that's kind of what we're doing now. While you're in school is to learn about these things, is that we do have a major emphasis on the diversity of our country, but then also noticing that people from different countries are actually moving over to America to work. And then also certain things are being moved to other countries like Mexico, India, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Pakistan, and stuff like that. And then also, obviously, as you millennials may know, or most of you who are millennials, that technology has changed the world completely. And then also, having majors where we specialize in helping people find work. See Appendix A, historical events. So I just want to let you know, in the textbook, there's a very long version of this. I just wanted to pick out a couple just to talk about, but please go through the Appendix A and just review, skim through it and stuff like that. All right, shift from rural to urban living in the industrial age, where we work and live. So like we talked about before, people move from farming towns into cities because of manufacturing or factory jobs. So that made a big change. Okay, September 11, 2001, and other military actions, thousands of men and women left their jobs to enlist. So right after 9/11, you notice that we actually end up going to war. So a lot of people who are very patriotic and were willing to enlist went into the military, and that also changes the life careers of certain people. Return to the workforce may require counseling interventions that involve career and personal concerns. So when people come back from, let's say, war or, let's say military service, their lives are a lot different than the people who did not serve, right? So for those people who are not familiar with, let's say, civilian life because they left at age 18 or 19 years old, they're going to need to understand how work works in a non-military setting. And then, of course, the recession in 2009 meant that a lot of people lost work. And how did that also, let's say, affect society? Okay, let's talk about the rise of industrialism, which we've talked about a little bit before. Change work environments dramatically. So there were urban areas expanded very fast. Immigration and from rural areas were common. So we're talking about people coming from different countries over to America, but also from rural areas. Urban settings are crowded living areas and impersonal workplaces. So again, we're talking about factory work, right? Lots of people also wanting to find work. So you can see how dangerous this is. And also, there were not a lot of laws that really protected employees. So employers, will have let's say, a potential employee, let's say, break their arm. They're going to go, well, too bad you can no longer do this job. You are now no longer working here. But now, if that happens, let's say because of a machine at work, there's going to be workers' compensation, right? But back then, they didn't actually have that stuff. So it was not very, very rights oriented when it comes to that. Father of career counseling movement is a person named Frank Parsons. Frank Parsons' early contributions. Let's talk a little bit about his area. His interests were social reform movements and civic development in the late 1800s. Also believed in women's suffrage. Women's suffrage is the right to vote, not the woman's right to suffer, okay? The right to vote. Taxation and then also education for all. So you believe that, if you have education, that will potentially change your career path, right? You might have to work from, or you might move from labor work into something a little bit more white collar, maybe more pay because of your education. Key interest is social reform and helping others make occupational choices. His book is called Choosing a Vocation in 1909. Parsons' framework believes that clear understanding of yourself, your aptitudes, abilities, resources, limitations, and other qualities is important. Knowledge of the requirements and conditions of success, advantages and disadvantages, compensation, opportunities, and prospect in different lines of work. True reasoning on the relation of these two groups of facts. So to be able to understand yourself, but then also understand what it takes to be successful, if you have those two things in your brain, you'll probably make better choices about your career. All right, the National Career Development Association, NCDA, in 1913 was developed. It was during this World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II. It gained the support of the federal government. So basically, this is an organization, a governmental organization, that's going to help people with their careers. World War I, tests to assist veterans in making decisions about educational pursuits and finding optimal jobs. So when people came back from the service and they were looking for work, how do we help them find what kind of work they like, or what kind of work they should go into? So they gave out assessments or surveys, questionnaires that would result in some answers that we might, gear this person towards this or this other job or this other job. The Great Depression, federal government supported the creation of work projects throughout the country. So during the Great Depression, which basically means a time where there's a lot of unemployment, what happens is that the government usually will create jobs for people. So one example is building freeways or fixing bridges or building bridges. So these are things that help the entire country, and it's needed. And because we have so many people unemployed, we might as well employ our citizens to do that so that they can then have money. And when they have money, they can spend it on businesses, and then those businesses can stay open, and then it becomes a cycle like that. And you'll see that happening, or you saw that happening in 2009 during the recession as well. You saw people starting to reinvest back into basically repaving freeways and stuff like that. World War II, women replaced men in the workplace. GI Bill of Rights encouraged veterans to attend college because then they were able to have free education. Start the career guidance movement. Programs to train career counselors funded by the federal government. And then in the 1950s, many theories on career development were published and still used today. And you will see that in the next couple of chapters where we really go in depth into the theory behind careers and then also how do these models that were created actually work. The National Occupational Information Coordinating Committee, NOICC, developed occupational information systems for each state. Assist in the organization of state committees, assist all users of occupational information to share information, provide labor market information for the needs of youth, and creation of national career counseling and development guidelines. So here's another idea, which is, we have so many states, right? If we have all the rules coming from one state, let's say DC, which is not necessarily a state, but you know what I mean, it might not necessarily, those ideas, the living conditions and all that stuff might not be the same as Wyoming, right? So instead, we say each state, you guys know your own people, you know your own economy, you know all those things. So you become the person who's going to help. So we set up different each state their own thing so that they can then work on themselves, as opposed to one country or one state basically dictating everything and then going, oh no, it doesn't actually work in this state or that state or whatever. Basic issues, the case for the individual, career life perspective, career choice, working in the 21st century, and lifelong learning. Counseling in the culturally diverse society, globalization, economic restructuring, effective use of career information, and integrating career and personal counseling are some areas that we want to discuss so that you understand how to talk to people that you might be working with in the future. And that doesn't mean just in rehab. You can also be, if you're in a criminal justice major, or if you're a nursing person, or whatever helping service area you are in, you're probably going to end up talking to people. Maybe if they're, let's say, out of probation, on probation, and they're thinking about work, you can actually have this conversation. You shouldn't just say, well, just go on to Craigslist or Indeed and just find a job. Because whenever you work in some place that you're not happy with, you usually don't stay that long. Or maybe you actually have the intelligence and experience, let's say, for a higher paying job, right? So we want to explore those things with our clients, our consumers. Okay, let's talk about the case for the individual. Individual traits were the primary focus of early career counseling. So the major goal back then was to match an individual's assets and strengths with the job requirements. So this job requires this, and if you like this or you are familiar with this, let's put you into that job. That's what they're talking about. Shift from vocational counseling to career counseling, the need to include the individual's purposeful life patterns through work. But the thing is, we started to go, oh, wait a minute, let's also think about whether or not this is really good for you. Just because you're good at this doesn't mean that you're going to be happy with it, right? Or the pay is going to be good enough to make you happy. So that becomes a shift from vocational counseling to career counseling. Not just finding one job, like one vocation, but for your entire career. Let's move you into an area where you're going to get work in an area that you like, so that once you finish with one job and you go to the next job, they're kind of related and also benefits you because you like it or enjoy it. Understanding of an individual's traits, aspirations. Aspirations basically, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay. Motives, preferred lifestyle, and career and personal concerns. So motives for preferred lifestyle basically also can mean, or, some of us don't really care about money, let's say, believe it or not. And some of us really love money, right? So those two people that if you met them would have very different types of lifestyles and living conditions, right? One would maybe be happy living in an apartment, but the other person goes, no, I need to live in a mansion. So if that happens, then, you can see how people's lives are very, very different, right? Suggest some things that might differ with each person. So like I just said, that's what I just brought up. All right, career life perspective. Interconnection between all life roles. Like we said in the beginning of this lecture, that there are all these connectedness. Donald Super is one of the major people in the field of career counseling because people are involved in several life roles simultaneously or at the same time. Success in one role facilitates success in another, and all roles affect one another over the lifespan. And as we talked about earlier, when you might have a bad day at home, you might bring that to work or vice versa. Okay. Prior, we used to ignore and overlook how much does one value time for, family and leisure, social status, place of residence, financial opportunities, right? Before, career counselors didn't really care about that. They're just like, this is what you do, your work. But now we start to think about the fact that some of us don't want to work more than 40 hours a week because they want to also have time to go hiking or travel or have a family or do whatever, right? And so those things now come into career counseling as a major consideration as well. Okay. And of course, some of us want to be well known for something, let's say, or maybe live in a really nice area. Maybe the area that you grew up was not so great. So you're like, my goal is to live in, I don't know, where does Kim Kardashian live? Live there. Then, you might want to work harder or find work that pays more so that you're allowed to then have those places to live in. All right, career choice. That means values, interests, abilities, skills, and work-life experience. It also includes globalization, which is the outsourcing of jobs to different countries. Economic conditions happening recently in 2009 caused the recession. So a lot of companies in America picked up their manufacturing, their production, and then moved it to different developing countries like India, Vietnam, uh, Mexico. So what happens is because companies want to save as much money so that when they hire someone to make it, it's very, very cheap, and then they can sell it for a higher price, they're going to make a lot more money. If you pay someone in America competitive wages, let's say $15 an hour, things need to cost more than $15 then, right? But when we go to the mall or we go to the store, we see things like, jeans that are for, let's say, $30. If it costs 2 hours, let's say $30, $15 an hour, then they're not making any money if they sell for $30. So they're gonna have to sell it for $100 to actually make any money. And do we all want to spend $100 for a pair of jeans? Some of us do, some of us don't. But if you want to have a deal, you're gonna have to understand that the clothes has to be made in a different country because it's cheaper. It's not gonna be cheap if it was made in America. This is why when you go to the Dollar Tree or the 99-cent store, everything is not made in America. Most of those things are made in China and stuff like that, where wages are paid very, very below $15, so the minimum wage in America. Working in the 21st century. Work is a major focus in an American adult's life. Career is a major focus in your life story. And that's honest. When you go to a party, usually it's like, hi, what's your name? And what do you do for a living? And so now it is really essentially part of our our life now. I don't think many people grow up thinking that they're not going to go to work, right? It's part of your identity. And some of us are very proud, and some of us are still working on it to achieve the status that we want. Peter Drucker, next society will be dominated by knowledge workers. Knowledge workers are defined as career development is characterized by finely tuned skills that are built around a solid knowledge base that continually needs updating. So what that's basically saying is you're going to become a specialist, okay? People don't want someone who just knows how to do everything. They're actually looking for people who are very trained in a very specific area. Classic examples would be medical doctors, dentists, and psychologists. More modern is high-tech information technologists, so internet science, computer science, and stuff like that. And then building secure networks. They really want to know if you know how to do a specific thing as opposed to knowing how to do everything. And so that's something that we need to start focusing on. What is the area of life that you want to specialize in? Changes from established work patterns of the past. So let's say I'll give you an example. For me, growing up, my parents basically said, you want to get a job in the government because, it's really hard to get fired from. It has really great benefits, and that's it, and then that's what you want. You want to work there forever, basically until you retire. But now there are independent contractors, self-employed individuals, freelance workers, which is kind of like the gig economy, which basically means working one job to another, like Uber or Lyft is freelance work. You're not going to get any health benefits from it or anything, but you do get a job and you get paid. And then also consultants, so very specialized person who's going to advise another, group of people how to maybe run their business or, and stuff like that. So those are examples right there that I just wanted to let you know. Temp agencies, the rise of outsourcing, don't have to work with red tape. This is one reason why temp agencies are actually very popular. Don't have to offer certain benefits like healthcare, and employers don't have to make a commitment to employees. So if you guys have ever worked at a temp agency, you'll notice that, they want to know, hey, do you know how to type? And then they might say, I need a person who's going to do some clerical stuff for a week or two. Sometimes the reason why that is better, or a company would want to hire a temp over replacing them, is because it costs a lot of money to find a permanent employee. You're talking about people interviewing, so they have to take time out to, spend time interviewing, like, let's say 10 people or whatever. That's a lot of time. And then analyze it, and then hire them, then train them. And so instead, if we already know someone who's already fully done or fully experienced with all that, or someone who can just come in and do the job really quickly that we're in a bind about, then leave, then, that's also very attractive as well. But the problem there is that it is not long-term work, and the person, as the employee at that time, is not going to get all the benefits that they deserve, like healthcare and stuff like that. So temp agencies are great if you're in a bind, but it's not great as a long-term thing for most people. Contracting for services. The business group may opt to contract with someone to take over payroll and accounting services. Some will work for the same site for a long time, while others will move around regularly. So what this basically means is, let's say that you opened up a business, right? Are you really good at math? Are you really good at managing money? If not, you're probably going to want to hire someone who really knows that area so that you can concentrate on, let's say, making the cupcakes for your cupcake store or something like that, right? So then that happens as you're contracting consultants or specialists to come in and do certain things out of it. Maybe you really, really hate cleaning. So you're going to hire someone who's custodial worker, who can then come in and clean because that's not really your job. Your passion is making cupcakes, but you don't want to clean. So that is what contracting services basically means. Globalization and economic restructuring. Global economy is international interactions. What that basically means is we're going to be talking to other countries much more than we did before because we're doing business with everyone else, like Mexico, Vietnam, China, India, the Philippines. So trade agreements and attempts to build international relationship is not a new concept, obviously. I'm sure as you have always been, as you've grown up, you've seen things made in China and all these other countries in your stores when you buy stuff, right? So it is not an old thing, but technology has kind of revamped it and changed it and actually excelled it, probably. Interdependent basically means that the world is becoming borderless. We're helping each other. I help you here, you help me save money, and stuff like that. Wages in some nations are significantly lower, causing an unbalance that needs to be fixed. And it's true. Although we love the fact that things are cheap, we also don't want poor living conditions for the people who make them, right? This is why you'll hear people talk about child labor laws because children, can work in developing countries because they might not require children to go to work or go to school. I'm sorry. So that becomes bad for their society, but sometimes we as a first world country kind of ignore those things, unfortunately, and that's actually quite sad. And we need to address those things. Unfair to those people and loss of jobs for Americans. And then, of course, Americans lose jobs because they're going over there to children. You'll hear about children making, tennis shoes and stuff like that. And that's also an issue because in America, there are people who can't find work because of that globalization. Effective use of career information. Computer-generated career information is now the thing to do, and this is why your assignment for this class, you're going to be doing a lot of computer-generated career information seeking. Internet resources is very important, and that's how everything is, right? You're getting all the work from school through the internet right now. A variety of career information resources, local newspapers that are devoted to job openings. Have you looked at a newspaper anytime recently? Probably not. So things are now kind of changing, right? Online source of job information. So examples would be like Indeed, Monster, Craigslist. Not all those things are great, but those are places where people find work. Snag a job. Also, our school has, and most universities will have a career development center where basically they will compile work, maybe at the university or the college, but also outside as well. So that's a really wonderful resource as well that we'll talk about in one of your assignments. And of course, word of mouth. Your friend, your coworker, your classmate going, hey, my place is hiring, does anyone want to work? That's another way of obviously finding work. Spokane talk about information seeking behavior. cognitive process involved in assimilating career information, and social restraints that restrict some people in career search process. So this is now talking about how do we find this information and how do we understand this information as well, right? It actually does require some brain work to understand what's going on in society, but also, hey, do I qualify for this job? What does it mean if I'm going to end up working here and stuff like that? It is something that is now considered really important to think about and discuss with your clients. Round and Tracy and Sampson and colleagues said that information processing skills are essential for making optimal career decisions. So if you really understand what's going on in the big picture, you'll probably make better choices than if you did not know those things. Counselors evaluate how clients process information during the career decision process, which basically means that as you meet your clients or your participants, you'll talk to them and then you'll get to know whether or not they're going to be able to do certain types of jobs or not by talking to them. Do they not understand how to do anything? Or maybe they have some sort of barriers, right? If you know these things by getting to know that person, then you're going to help them and guide them into a better career choice decision. Timing of intervention strategies to maintain productive, effective information-seeking behaviors. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later on in a different chapter. But let's say that you just got a divorce and you are freaking out. Is this the best time to make a career choice? Not necessarily. You might need a job to find work to support yourself, but it might not necessarily be the right job. Does that make sense? And there's a difference between those two things as well, right? We sometimes work just to get the money, and sometimes we also go to school to find the work that we also love. And sometimes we have to do one while we're working on the other as well. Scharf in 2013 said that counselors have the responsibility to know certain types of occupational information and specific source of information, such as salary ranges or how much you get paid, the outlook. Is it a job that's actually going to exist in the future or is it going to go away? Educational requirements, and then where more information can be found. And throughout this class, you will learn how to become a counselor who has a lot of the information at your fingertips. I'm not saying that you need to memorize every job and how much they pay and what the education requirements are, but I want to give you the skill set so that you can actually search for those things within, like, let's say, a minute. Okay. All right, Reardon and colleagues in 2000 said instead of a person asking for specific information, such as where is the best paying job, the client should begin career counseling by focusing on self-knowledge. And you'll notice that in this book, we really focus on the person because if you don't know who you are, it's going to be really hard to really understand what you're going to do for a living that you're going to love, right? So we want to focus on past experiences, what you liked and what you didn't like to do when you were working, so that we can guide you to a better place. Because maybe you really love working in the outdoors, okay? You would not probably want me to tell you to go work in a library. Does that make sense? Because that's indoors in a little stuffy area and stuff like that, or, libraries if you see them as stuffy areas. Connect and relate life experiences. Recognize that all life experiences contribute to self-understanding. Clarification of values, interests, and knowledge of personal skills are going to also help you find that ideal job. And as a counselor, as you talk to a person, you're going to get to understand all those things so that you can better understand what kind of career they might want to head into. Career information is more effective when a client has gone through a period of readiness that is prompted by an empowerment to evaluate and comprehend self. So what this is talking about is kind of like cheerleading, right? You're like, are you ready to go? Yay, let's go. We're going to do it. And you're going to cheer them on, and they're going to feel motivated to want to find a job that they're going to be happy about. So we're talking about readiness for career information. Clients have realistic expectations, free of faulty beliefs that interfere with rational decision making, learn how to effectively process career information, and have a clear, fairly accurate perception of self. Watch out for information overload. Basically, let's say that this person is saying that they want to start reading. You don't want to give them a 500-page book with no pictures. They might mean that they are ready for Cat in the Hat, right? So by understanding them, you don't overload them because you know what their limits are. Counselors that don't uncover underlying constraints that limit options. There are also counselors that get hired that really don't know what they're doing. And we're trying to prevent that from happening. This is why you're in this class and maybe even in this field. So we want to make sure that you are aware that everyone has things that are in their past that affects how they behave now. Okay, so by understanding all those things, we can then understand how to help them. If you are a person who doesn't care and you're just like, well, I just got hired, I'm just gonna do whatever, that person is going to be guided in the wrong way potentially. And that's actually going to harm them. And that is an area that we're going to also talk about in a future chapter. Evaluate the positives and negatives of all jobs with your client. Discussion with workers, parents, and other important adults in that person's life. Like maybe they want to consult with their partners, their wives, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, parents, or maybe their mentors or teachers. So it's good for them to talk to other people and get also a sense of opinion from other people as well. Shadowing workers on the job. Participate in work-based education programs and internships and apprenticeships. Those are really great ways for a person to understand really what this job entails. Integrating career and personal counseling currently place a strong emphasis on the connection between career development and mental health. Like we said before, and this book will emphasize this quite a bit, which is that, you need to be at your optimal when you are going to find work or decide about work. Okay, if you're distracted because of the sadness of the death of a partner or parent, you're not really in the right stage in your life to make major decisions, right? You need to deal with it, cope with it, go through grieving process and stuff like that, and then once you are aware of what's going on, you can make more sound decisions. Okay. Mental health concerns that inhibit systematic logical thinking can interfere with the career choice process as well as career development. And this is a graphic from the NAMI website. And basically, this is a National Association for Mental Illness. And it tells that 1 in 4 adult experiences mental illness every year. 1 in 17 live with a serious mental illness. So we're also talking about disabilities and barriers as well that prevent us from making the best decisions, okay? Sometimes you are going to meet people with disabilities that don't necessarily comprehend some realistic things. And let's say that there is a person who is in a wheelchair and they say they want to be an astronaut. Okay, although that's a really great goal to have, most likely that's not going to happen because usually if you're going to travel in space, as of now, you need to be in physical, your physical abilities need to be, near perfect in that sense. And so you might want to then gear them towards maybe space-related work, but not necessarily be an astronaut because you know that their passion is space. So maybe they can become a researcher or maybe someone who works at NASA and stuff like that, so that they're still involved in the area that they love, but they're actually doing realistic work that they can handle, let's say. Personality disorders can make it difficult to function in a work environment. So that means that if you do have one, you might have poor performance. You might not go to work all the time, so there might be a high number of absences. Maladaptive reactions to the workplace. Maybe there is a situation that happens, and then instead of talking it out in a professional manner, there's screaming or yelling or maybe even hitting. So those are things that are not good. So when it comes to a person with a personality disorder, not saying that everyone with a personality disorder does this, but some do, we need to address those things and be concerned about those things. Not all people will have severe personal concerns that need regular therapy. Some may need personal counseling before career counseling or at the same time. So maybe they need some temporary ones to really understand what's going on. And once they get it, then they don't need to go to therapy anymore. Counselors then need to know about a common symptom in mental health, such as depression. So as a counselor, as a probation officer, as a nursing professional, psychology professional, or whatever it is that you're majoring in, you should also understand the typical types of mental health issues that arise in most people. Okay, so depression is one of those things. That's it for this chapter. I hope you enjoyed getting kind of a brief overview of this book.